WNN. We're mixing some baseball in. Of course, our chat with Alex Lewis as well as Matt Skura from the Ravens. Patrick's in Essex on Tuesday night as well as Wednesday. We're doing some Terps, but it's all things Hotlanta GA this week. Garrett Downing does all things Ravens. You've seen him in the lounge there and is a digital host for all things Ravens.com. You can find him at GDowning14 with the power of sizzle on the front of his Twitter. What's going on, man? This is this is where it gets interesting, right? And I guess in your building, the relative paranoia of the coach mixed in with the other team not knowing who to prepare for. And we have two completely different offenses, two completely different looks. This is as interesting a week around there with sort of quarterback controversy, which is something we've never had around here, Garrett.
It's strange. This is my 8th season with the Ravens. And every year since I've been here, it's been very clear that Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback. There's no debate about that. And every game, with the exception when he went down with the knee injury. So it's a strange feeling. It's a new era, so to speak. And it'll be really interesting to see how all of it plays out. I think a lot of it depends on, obviously, Joe's health. But beyond that, I think that, even if Joe's 100% healthy, the Ravens have a decision to make. And the reality is that it's a significant decision in the franchise history because it affects more than just this game or this week. It's bigger than that when you're talking about a quarterback and a player that's been here for more than a decade. So, really interesting times. But I think that in the midst of that, it's also really exciting because the Ravens are sitting here. If the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs, whatever that's worth. But I think
that's worth a lot. That's I don't poo-poo that, right? I mean, we've played catch up before, and if you've got to get on a plane and go down to Houston and play the first week of January, that's why you're playing. And if you're afraid of that, but that is this month, right? Like if you can win in Kansas City or if you can win out in Carson, you earn the right to play in January, and if you can't, it's because you lost these kinds of games in December, literally.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that 9-7 is probably. It's really interesting when I think about the playoff picture because I've said for a while that I think 9-7 it gets you in, but that to me is a question because the Colts are coming on strong. They don't necessarily have that difficult of a schedule. They almost lost to Miami on Sunday, which I think would have been nice, but if you finish at 9-7, depending on who your 2 extra losses are to. That may or may not get you past the Colts because there's a real chance I think that they could get to 10 because they're red hot right now. So you don't have much room, if any, to give up. And then on the flip side of that too, this sounds kind of crazy to be talking about this, but the division is not out of the mix either. And I'm not just drinking the purple Kool-Aid. When you look at it, the Steelers, they just obviously lost on Sunday. They almost lost the previous week. Probably should have lost.
Yeah, they haven't played well in a month either. I mean, we talk about how bad the Bengals have been. The Steelers haven't been good either.
Yeah, and the Steelers still have the Saints, the Chargers, and the Patriots left on the schedule. There's a chance they could lose all 3 of those games. There's no guarantee they win those games. So, the Ravens have a real chance here to make a run, but they don't have any ground to lose at the same time. You lose on Sunday, then all of a sudden you're on the outside looking in, and it's a little bit more dicey. So they don't have any ground to give up, and I think that I do think that they're in a pretty good place right now.
Garrett Downing joining us here. He is in the building in Owings Mills. You can, of course, follow all of his work. And getting ready for this game specifically, this is a fascinating thing with the Falcons offense that you feel like, in Julio Jones, the best player you're going to see all year within the framework of that offense. 1,300 yards already. Here they go again. They're going to throw the ball. It's going to be a test for the defense. As much as the Lamar and Joe thing will fill up all the oxygen all week and running the football, defensively, they're going to need to be better than they've been lately because there was no A.J. Green for Andy Dalton, and now there's no Andy Dalton, right? But this is an offense that's full test this week, and this will sort of line them up for the Pat Mahomes show as well as the Phillip Rivers show down the line.
Yeah, this defense is obviously a prideful group of players, veteran players on this team, so that you look at this defense, and they're sitting there. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the updated numbers after this week, but they came into last week ranked in first in the league in yards allowed and points allowed. And so if you're going to be that team and you want to talk about kind of being one of the best defenses in the league, which the Ravens are, then you need to deliver in big games. And obviously there's a huge test against the Falcons on Sunday. I think really the key when you go up against these teams like a Falcons or a Chiefs is you need to play well in the red zone, because you're not going to shut those teams down. The days of completely stopping teams from moving the football are done, based on the way that the league has gone, based on the way that the game is officiated. You're not going to stop a team and hold them to 100 yards, particularly a potent offense. So they're going to move the ball. So what you have to do is you have to stand up tall in the red zone and keep teams. You got to trade field goals instead of touchdowns. And that, I think, is going to be key. The other part of it, too, is you keep the offense off the field. And that goes back to the quarterback thing and the offense. That's one thing that I really like about Lamar Jackson is he has obviously invigorated this running game in particular. Suddenly the Ravens have the best running offense in the NFL with him and Gus Edwards. And if you can milk clock, keep teams off the field, pound the ball on the ground, then that is going to do wonders for your defense, because they're going to be more fresh, and you're also not going to have Matt Ryan and Pat Mahomes and Phillip Rivers out there in a position to score a bunch of points.
Garrett, I think it's interesting the last 2 weeks that not just that they played and that they've won and that we've entered this sort of controversy where 4 weeks ago this never would have been the case, right? Like, I mean, Joe was not bad at any point this year. The running game was bad, but it's not like Joe was errant or not seeing the field well. Maybe after the hip injury in the Cincinnati game, he missed a few things. But with a healthy Joe back and this notion that the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Buccaneers defense already got Smitty fired weeks ago, that these teams would have trouble preparing for Lamar specifically, as well as Joe. Seeing that Saints thing a few weeks ago and seeing how dynamic that can be when you can put a quarterback on the field that can throw the ball 60 yards on the fly with accuracy, and you've got Lamar Jackson, who now needs to be respected as a passer and a runner and keeping your linebackers and safeties honest. I would think that this is where Marty Morningwig, for a few weeks, could really go mad scientist here if he gets a healthy Flacco back and nobody's on the piss here and they're trying to win football games at every level, that this is a tool that other teams don't have anymore. I remember the best part about Cordell Stewart was when he wasn't the primary quarterback, when he would come in and there was always a razzle-dazzle that made it almost impossible to guard, to think about as a defensive coordinator. I'd like to think 3 or 4 weeks from now, this thing could be pretty dangerous if they can win a game or two and if they can keep the peace. And that's where Flacco and Lamar and their relationship, and John Harbaugh is trying to keep a job, and all of them, and the Yondas and the Suggs and the Cooks and the Crabtrees and the Weddles that are just trying to get to that playoff game in January. I can envision that if the symphony all plays together, it's got a lot of weapons here all of a sudden with the Gus Bus and Lamar Jackson and running the football and passing the football and 4 tight ends that have interesting skill sets and 3 pretty dynamic wide receivers that have a different skill set.
Yeah, I do think that Marty and these offensive coaches could have a lot of fun and sort of dialing things up and how they use these different weapons. It'll be interesting because, the Ravens obviously went with a limited version of a 2-quarterback offense for the first 9 games of the season, and that was Lamar Jackson for anywhere between 3 to 10 plays. So now, what do they do moving forward? Because I certainly think that Lamar has shown that he is more than capable of playing an entire game. And so do you keep him there? And if that's the option, do you then roll in Flacco for some unique packages and use him in a special way? Do you give him a series? Or vice versa, if Flacco's the guy, do you then give Lamar either a full series? Do you just up the number of plays that he's on the field? All of those are on the table, and it'll be interesting to see what the Ravens do. You also have this emergence of an undrafted rookie running back who's carried for 100 yards in back-to-back games. First Ravens rookie to do so since Jamal Lewis back in 2000. So Gus Edwards has been kind of a really special find, I think, particularly for what the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson when he's on the field, because Jackson brings the razzle-dazzle in terms of the speed and the elusiveness and the guy that can get out around the edge, where Gus Edwards, he's the hammer. He's 240 pounds running up the gut. He's a power runner, downhill guy, obviously a much different style from Lamar Jackson and really any of the Ravens running backs. So I think that he's been a great addition and a great find for the Ravens. So and the other thing I'd say, too, is this, Nestor. I think that, Lamar, the conversation around quarterback has less to do, in my mind, with Joe and more to do with Lamar. I think that he's come along, he's come a far way since the Ravens drafted him. He's got dynamic playmaking ability. The offense has certainly seen a spark since he's been inserted into the lineup. So I don't think it's a function of Joe is playing so horribly, we need to bench him. That's the situation that's obviously gone on in Jacksonville with the Jags making the change from Bortles to Kessler. That's not the situation for the Ravens. I think Joe was great the first 5 games of the season.
The Jacksonville Jaguars would love to have Joe Flacco as their quarterback.
Oh, they would love it. And they've gone, the offense went into a bit of a lull the 3 weeks, 4 weeks leading up into the bye. But my point is just that it's not like Joe was playing horribly. Joe had been up and down, and at times he had been really, really good. But Jackson has provided a spark to this offense without question. And so the conversation about who's going to start at quarterback, again, in my mind, has more to do with Jackson and less to do with Joe playing poorly.
He is Garrett Downing. He is G Downing14 on Twitter. You can find him out at BaltimoreRavens.com and in the lounge and writing about players and talking to players and chatting with players as well. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Strategic Factory. I'm sporting the gear. They also sponsor the Ravens as well, so I bring that up. I got my little blue koozie at the Ravens game last week. Strategic Factory doing all sorts of marketing and printing and promotional goods. If you need signage, printing, branded apparel, logo designs, Strategic Factory is on it for you. Also brought to you by our friends at Sporticulture. The flowers around me on the set always smell fantastic. They're always beautiful purple. And you can order them online at sporticulture.com. They're local, but they send them anywhere, as well as collegiate signage as well. And this is my friend Court, who is an old-line Houston Oilers fan, who bought the NFL license to be able to do this. So check them out at sporticulture.com and send some flowers away as well. King Discount Liquors, lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Give the King a ring. I got to get out there for some Malbec. My wife picked up some Gewürztraminer to go with the turkey, but I'm all about the red wine once we get to December. Garrett Downing is all about Atlanta this weekend. We'll be head down. I'm looking forward to seeing the new dome down there, man. I know that much. And this week we got Alex Lewis and Matt Skura coming out. I know you've talked to the players in the O-line and where we are with Ronnie Stanley and Zeus and James Hurst with his injury right now. The amazing part to me has been over the last 2 weeks that we're not talking about the offensive line anymore when the team can run for 250 and 300 yards a week behind this offensive line. And seeing these guys in the locker room afterward, I've said it a few times, it almost feels like they have more energy after the game than they do before. There's something about run blocking that sort of goes along with the mindset of a guy like Marshall Yanda, who also had his own histrionics on Sunday. Marshall's been in the news the last week. I know he doesn't like that much.
Yeah, this offensive line overall, I think that they're really enjoying this offense. With Lamar Jackson in there and this run-heavy system that the Ravens have employed the last couple of weeks. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about a spark that I think Jackson has provided. And offensive linemen will tell you that they prefer run blocking over pass blocking any day of the week. And, the reason is that you just get to go and try to out-physical another guy. When you're pass blocking, it's a little bit more about finesse and you're backpedaling and you're sort of not trying to screw up. That's basically your job as a pass blocking offensive lineman is don't give up the sack. Don't screw up. Where as a run blocker, your job is to clear the way, pave a way, make the hole. And it's just sort of a different mindset. And so offensive linemen like that. I think that they've certainly have been encouraged by that. Yanda's a guy that loves pass block or loves to get after teams and be a mauling blocker in the run game. And I think that mentality is embraced throughout the offensive line. So, I think every fan base in football probably complains about their offensive line. I think that's just kind of the way it goes. Probably complains about play calling, complains about clock management, complains about offensive line play. I think that's just generally speaking the way that probably 90% of NFL fan bases are. It's kind of the way it goes. But I think this Ravens offensive line has been pretty good this year, to be honest. I saw a stat yesterday from Pro Football Focus that none of the starters currently on the offensive line have allowed a sack since week 5 for the Ravens. So to me, that's saying something. And they have one of the best pass blocking efficiencies in the NFL. And they also, obviously, the past 2 weeks have paved the way for a 100-yard rusher. 2 weeks ago, it was 2 100-yard rushers. So I think this offensive line has been playing pretty well. And that's a testament to, certainly Marshall coming back and being healthy and playing like his old self. Matt Skura being inserted into the lineup this year for Ryan Jensen and kind of quietly having a good season. And then, I also think that you get a guy like Orlando Brown Jr., who, I said it at the time, and I think it's kind of proving to be true, is looking like one of the steals of the draft and one of the best guys that the Ravens nabbed in this year's draft.
Well, once you get a starter, not in the first round right away, you feel pretty good about that. Garrett Downing is our guest. He's GDowning14, and, of course, out in the lounge at BaltimoreRavens.com, and always working out of the building as we get ready for all things Atlanta, Georgia this week. Tight ends. I haven't talked to Luke about this week. I'm sure I will before the week's over, but seeing with Nick Boyle putting his nose in there and H-back, and in Patrick Ricard H-back, and in, big fat back guys busting up holes and, creating sort of a second level of running behind these offensive linemen. That has also been a fascinating thing to watch because we were wondering how many tight ends they were going to keep around, and you see Hayden Hurst running around in coverage and also doing some blocking. This has been a real testament to the tight ends and how they're running that system as well.
Yeah, I think these tight ends have been good. Nick Boyle is somebody that, like you say, he's not afraid to stick his nose in there, and he really gives you a lot, both in the, the running game in particular. That's where he's so valuable. But he's a better pass catcher than I think he gets credit for. Then you look at the rookies. Mark Andrews has been fantastic, had the big play on Sunday, and I think that Hayden Hurst is going to get more and more involved as we go along here. You saw him, have a few catches on Sunday. I think that's a good sign. And I think that his role is only going to continue to grow.
Anything you want to say about the rest of this, how this wild card thing? Because we sit around and watch our game, right? And then I'm watching the Titans screw up, and I'm watching Houston run around with a quarterback that we hope that Lamar Jackson can become one day, right? And you watch the Dolphins roll over, and Cincinnati's clearly done at this point. It really is amazing how these teams have just sort of gotten out of the way to some degree. I think our worst fear is that 2 Chargers were going to show up and, be 11-5, 12-4 kind of. It is wide open. I mean, look at where the Redskins and the Cowboys and the Eagles are. It's amazing how the league backs up this time of year when teams get tired and beaten up a little bit.
Yeah, when I look at I go back to that 9-7 number, and really whether that's going to be enough. That's to me is the question: is 9-7 going to be enough? And I think it's dicey. I think the Colts are the team for that 6th spot is really the team to beat. But I go back to what I said earlier also, that the division is by no means done. That's not out of the question. It's a bit of a reach, but it's not out of the question. And then, this weekend, the Ravens are going to gain it. If the Ravens can beat Atlanta, they're going to gain a game on either Pittsburgh or San Diego because the Chargers and the Steelers play each other. So then all of a sudden, the 5th spot, let's just say the Steelers win, then they're a game away from the Chargers, and they still play the Chargers. The Ravens do. So the 5th spot then is by no means out of the question. If the Chargers win, then you're a game behind the Steelers, or a game and a half kind of, with that tie in there. So it's exciting. It's interesting. I think that there's obviously a couple of teams that are certainly going to be there. The Chiefs are going to be there. The Patriots are going to be there. The Texans are all in. The Steelers are going to make the playoffs. The question is whether it's as a wild card or whether it's as a division winner. And then I think it's between the Ravens and the Colts and the Chargers. But I think the Chargers are probably going to be in. So you're kind of looking at Ravens, Colts, Steelers right in the mix there. The Titans I don't think are going to be long for. They obviously lost big last night. Bengals with Dalton, they're going to be done. So it's going to be a very interesting final 6 weeks of the season.
Take care of business is all we got to do, right? Go down to Atlanta, win
exactly.
this one, and then worry about Kansas City around the corner. It is fascinating, all of this throw out Harbaugh and throw out Flacco, and the season's over, and they're under 500 and whatnot. Garrett, I would be absolutely stunned right now. Whatever is in my wallet, I would be willing to wager that we have not seen the end of Joe Flacco. You know what I mean? As much as everybody's throwing the dirt on it, Joe Flacco has not thrown his last pass in a Ravens jersey, and certainly not his last meaningful pass. I believe that.
Yeah, and you certainly could be right. And to me, it's one of the great questions, not just of this week, but of the final few weeks of the season, how all that's going to play out. It'll be, we'll spend, we're going to spend a lot of time obviously talking about it, but it's going to be a really interesting scenario to see how all that plays out. And I think you could certainly be right, no question about it.
A lot of mystery around Owings Mills right now. Garrett, keep up the great work. We'll be in touch. We'll see you this week. We'll be following along.
All right, thanks, Nestor. Have a great day, man.
Garrett Downing, Downing14, one of my favorites from BaltimoreRavens.com. You can follow along with him out on Twitter as well as in the lounge, as they say. They never invite me into the lounge. I don't know why. It's because I don't shave but once a week. I don't know. Need a haircut anyway. Nasty at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel, and always in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. 24 hours a day from anywhere after I sneeze in the world on your mobile device. Podcast. Listen to what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want. It's the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.